Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Lighthouse sessions. In today's episode, you're stuck with just me as a solo episode. And I hope that's exciting for you because we are going to talk about one of my favorite obsessions. And that is what I call the perfect prospect persona. You may have heard of this. You can refer to it as your ideal client profile, your ideal client avatar, things along those lines. And basically, the gist of it is, if I may be so blunt, if you're in business and you can't tell me simply and with confidence who you serve, I can almost guarantee that your business is going to struggle. And if not struggle, at least it's going to be harder than it needs to be. So when I think about business, when I think about helping entrepreneurs, I think the number one thing I like to do, and I use Chat GPT and custom GPTs for this, is to help them get really clear on who they serve. Now, for the record, a lot of experts out there will tell you you can serve as many audiences as you want. I am a practical person. So I have a basis and a foundation in business coaching and I've been a lifetime entrepreneur and I've been an accountant in some point in my life. And my approach is really simple. If you know who you serve and you do it well, you can then decide, do I add another avatar or do I go deeper into this existing avatar and expand my geography? So dialing it back, there's a few different ways to slice and dice your client base. The obvious one is by industry. So let's say you are an accounting firm and you want to serve electricians. So that's an industry specialization. The second way you can specialize is by geography. So as an accountant, you might say, I'm a bricks and mortar accountant in downtown Atlanta. I serve local businesses within a 10-mile radius of my office. So that's a geographic specialty. And then the one that I think people miss, and I think this is actually my favorite in some ways, is by problem solved. So it's not so much about what industry they're in or where they're located, it's by the type of problem they have. So I'll give you an example. I create custom GPTs for visionary entrepreneurs. And I don't care where they're geographically located. I don't care what industry they're in. What I care about is they are facing burnout. They're working longer hours than they should. They know they need to look at using AI. In some respect, they're looking at probably generative AI. They're looking at how do we use ChatGPT better in our business? Do we use it? They're looking at the problem is too much time being spent on activities that keep them busy, don't necessarily generate results. So I focus on the problem. Now, coming back to what that looks like, if you are in an industry where you want to focus on an industry-specific specialization, my advice is pick one avatar, master that, and then scale that mastery to other geographies. So the easiest path, shortest path, least expensive, is to become an industry expert in a geographic region. That's what I kind of call the training wheels. Now, it's not the best for everybody, but it is the easiest to start. So if you're launching a new business, my advice to you is to pick a geography and an industry, solve problems for that geography, that industry. And then if you want to scale, you look at that same industry in other geographies. Now, again, I'm not here to debate which one is best and why it works, but I do want to introduce you to Patricia Parker. And Patricia Parker is a specialist. So this is Patricia Parker. She's not a real human being, but she is one of my favorite colleagues. What Patricia does, and she is a specialist. Now, a lot of people will come to me and say, well, I was working with Patricia. We built my persona And then I got her to build a lead magnet, and then I got her to build my website, and then I got her to do this and that and that and that. And the outcome was always the same. The persona was good, but everything else was mediocre or terrible. So I had to add this warning label, and I share this because it's important. Patricia's skill set is strictly limited to creating and refining a perfect prospect persona. If you ask her for anything else, she will refuse. Now, the reason I bring this up is that a lot of people will hire a specialist and then ask that specialist to do generalist work in fields that don't matter to them or they're not experts in. And that's when you get mixed results. So, for example, if you have an electrician come into your house to fix your wiring and they say, while you're here, I've got a loose floorboard. Would you mind fixing that? And, oh, my toilet's got a drip. The key is the electrician might be able to do those things because they have a general skill set. They might be generally handy, but the reality is their licensing, their insurance, their training is in the electrical. So if you're going to fix 3 different problems, you would rather bring in 3 different experts, not get one expert in one thing to dabble as a generalist in the others. So that's my little rant for the day. But Patricia's skill set is in understanding we have a framework that we call the fears, frustrations, wants, and aspirations. And what Patricia does with your guidance is she asks you some questions. And the way she's set up, very simple, is she will explain what a perfect prospect persona is. If you click on this, you can then have a conversation with her. And the second conversation should be, what questions should I ask you before we start? And then once we've gotten what I should know out of the way, the third thing is, what questions do you have for me before we start? And then finally, I put this extra button here. Can you help me with anything other than crafting a perfect prospect persona? Her answer to that, by the way, should always be no. And you're the adult in the conversation. If she says yes, you need to remind her and say, no, Patricia, go back. You are just helping me with my perfect prospect persona. So this is a little rant because every time I think I've idiot-proofed one of my custom GPTs, somebody comes along and asks a question I wouldn't have expected and somehow takes Patricia down a tangent and then blames Patricia and by extension me when they don't get the result that she was created to deliver. So a friend of mine said it well. He said, I'm selling scalpels and somebody comes along and complains that my scalpel was terrible for putting butter on their toast. It didn't help cut their wood the way they hoped it would. It's a scalpel. You use it for surgery, period. So Patricia is a scalpel. She's not an axe. She's not a butter knife. She's a scalpel. And her job is to cut through the noise and help you get really clear on who you serve. So I highly recommend, if you're new to Patricia, always click, please explain why a perfect prospect persona is important. And she will give you some background information. And basically, this is the foundation for everything I do with my clients, everything I recommend. If you pick one niche and you focus on it, you cut a lot of your marketing effort, you cut a lot of your customer service, and quite frankly, you don't have to develop as many products. I also firmly believe in the old adage that it is cheaper to get an existing customer to pay you more than it is to find a new customer to pay you something. So I always look at my existing personas, who do I serve? And I find the word I use is obsession. I think a lot of people prefer the term passionate. I'm obsessed with my customer. So I will spend every waking moment identifying every pain point possible that I can imagine. And then I find ways to solve them. Now, to be clear, I'm a specialist. What I do is I look at ways to solve problems. And sometimes the way to solve a problem is I'm creating a new product or a new service. Sometimes I'm finding a new connection in my network to refer out to. Remember, I said be a specialist. I build custom GPTs that enhance the humans we have. My mission on this planet is to enhance, not replace humans. If you need anything else, I'm going to look to my network and see who I know that can help you. So I use my powers to focus on time savings and getting high quality results. I love leverage. I love the shortest path to cash. If you need other help, like say you come to me and say, Jeff, can you help me create a website? The answer is yes, I can create a website. Do I want to? Hell no. So that is my little rant about using specialists for generalist things. And what Patricia does is she identifies and shares why a persona matters. All right. So the key is now we're going to ask. So what questions should I ask you before we start? And now, oops, let's keep that out. So I would say she's given me the questions and the answers. So that's good. If she doesn't answer them properly, you can say, could you tell me more? Usually what I'll do is I'll say, I understand question 6, but question 7, I need more information. But she's done a Q&A. And now the next thing is, what questions do you have for me before we get started? And this is where, so my advice to you is answer these one at a time, or you can answer them all at once, up to you. And answer them to the best of your abilities. Your answers don't have to be perfect, but basically she's got 20 questions. That is a lot. Usually most people answer 10 and they get bored. So answer what you can. And then once you've got that and you're happy with it, then you say, can we work to refine my perfect prospect persona? Now, I'm going to stop the teaching there because in the digital dojo, we practice. Your job is to understand a good persona from a bad one, and you need to understand how to make sure it fits in your business. What we tend to do is we identify favorite best clients, and we try to find ways to replicate their thinking and their challenges. And now we're asking for a random thing outside her skill set, and she says no. Believe it or not, that took a lot of work to get her to be that firm in her boundaries. I would highly encourage all of you to get that firm in your boundaries, because when we say no to the distractions, we can focus on being the brilliant humans we were meant to be in our zones of genius. Now, for the record, I accept there are people out there who say zone of genius singular. I believe a lot of us are capable of zones of genius, plural. So that's the key. I want you to learn the lessons, apply this in your life. And I'm going to ask you this question. It's my favorite. How does the perfect prospect persona apply to you in your business? And you may be of the opinion that the only correct answer is it doesn't. I respect that. I will say good luck. Now, if you do believe that the perfect prospect persona is relevant to your business, let's have a chat about how Patricia might be able to help you. Thank you.